You come to my house, you knock on my door, you say, hey, I'm Devin Branch, I'm a Green Party candidate, I'm running for mayor. I'm saying, I don't know what that is, I'm cooking dinner, I'm helping kids with homework in 60 seconds or less. Can you explain to me what that is?
Okay, if someone says in 60 seconds or less, well, no one usually says that. But yes, can we say what the Green Party is? The Green Party is a party that supports peace and nonviolence, that supports social justice, that supports environmentalism, and that supports grassroots democracy. That means the people like you being in charge of your own affairs.
So what would be the difference between that and the Democratic Party?
The Democratic Party doesn't really stand for anything whatsoever. The Democratic Party lays down in the face of Republican pressure, time in and time out. And when you ask the average black person in any community what does the Democratic Party stand for, they really don't have any answer. They don't know any portions of the Democratic Party platform. They just know that they liked Obama. They do, in some cases, there are some issues that they can point to, like, reproductive rights, things like that. But for the most part, people vote for the Democratic Party because it's been the only option in places like East Cleveland. There's never been a non-Democrat on the ballot since we've had a partisan primary system. Okay, well, it's not so challenging to explain to people about the Green Party. Most people that I speak to, if I'm going down the street speaking to just a new resident, they haven't heard very much about the Green Party. But the truth is, most people don't know very much about the Democratic Party, so sometimes they'll ask me what the Green Party stands for. And so I'll let them know. I'll address some of the issues that are part of the pillars of the Green Party, like peace and nonviolence, grassroots democracy, ecology, social justice. These things are things that they support. And these are things that are very relevant to the city of East Cleveland. So when we talk about peace and nonviolence in the city of East Cleveland, you've had the government and also people during political campaigns engaging in physical force and threats and intimidation in order to win the election. We had one woman who was Carrie Owen, who reported that she was robbed at gunpoint and her petitions were stolen 2 days before they were to be turned in when she was running for mayor in the same election in the Democratic primary. During the recall campaign, as you know, I was arrested on trumped up charges and put in jail. We have an absence of democracy here, and force has been used to enforce the status quo here. So the idea of nonviolence and peace resonates with people in East Cleveland. Also, of course, grassroots democracy. In East Cleveland, we have one of the lowest voter turnouts anywhere in the state of Ohio. And part of that is because people have not been included in the process. And until the recall campaign that we led, and now, of course, there's been some revisionist history. There have been people who say that I didn't lead the recall campaign, but of course you were there and you saw the reality of that. I certainly did lead the recall campaign, and we were successful for the first time in the history of the city of East Cleveland in recalling any elected officials, and we recalled both the mayor and the council president at that time. And that was grassroots democracy in action. That was the people, the working class people, overwhelmingly working class people, rising up against the leadership that had failed them and democratically removing them from office. And so that's another principle of the Green Party which definitely resonates with me and the residents very strongly. Also, ecology, which is effectively environmentalism, and that has not been something that has been very strongly represented in the black community, not only recently, but period. And that's unfortunate. Many people have looked at environmentalism as a sort of middle-class white person's cause. But we just left Noble Road, and you see the dump on Noble Road, and you know about the Flint crisis. It's actually the working class and the black populations of these communities that are the most likely to suffer from, the problems of environmental catastrophe. And yet, environmentalism is presented as if it's some kind of middle-class white issue. No, we need to be concerned about the environment. It's September, almost October, and it's over 90 degrees right now. We need to be concerned about global warming and the impact that it's had on, communities of color all over the world. So that's another reason why people support it. And of course, social justice. The Green Party is a social justice-oriented party. When you have a situation like we have had in East Cleveland, when the Cleveland Police Department drove into our middle school parking lot and fired 137 shots, killing 2 unarmed and defenseless black people. Though police brutality is not the be-all and end-all of social justice, it is a major issue a major concern of people in East Cleveland and black people everywhere. And so when you talk about social justice, that resonates. Also, people in East Cleveland were victimized by the foreclosure crisis. And that's another issue of social justice. People who had been paying mortgages, on properties that they could not afford. It's not that people couldn't afford the properties. If the people were given decent mortgages, they would have been able to afford the property. But they were tricked in some cases into, getting these adjustable rate mortgages and told when they got them that they would be able to refinance before the rate adjusted to the new rate. And then they ended up losing their homes. So they understand. So the idea of social justice resonates with them. That people who have paid and paid and paid and done the best that they could to comply with reasonable payments and then end up losing their properties, that's wrong, that's not right. They understand that people who've been paying rent for 4, 5, sometimes over 15 years on properties that if they were sold wouldn't sell for over $10,000, but then have a bad patch, maybe a bad 2 or 3 months and end up on the street, they know that's not right. And so people support the social justice component, but you'll see the other principles. Things like gender equality and feminism. In East Cleveland, we live in a community that is majority female. So the majority of the population in East Cleveland, adult population, consists of women. And one of the main safety concerns, that people have is not, threats of gun violence in East Cleveland, but many women are concerned about being able to walk down the street without having to go through a gauntlet of harassment. And this is unacceptable. And as mayor, this is something that we'll address. We will make sure that they understand that harassment of any of our residents or anyone, period, in the city of East Cleveland will not be tolerated. We will also not tolerate human trafficking. We have a problem with human trafficking in the city of East Cleveland. And that's not going to be tolerated. And we'll defend the rights of those women, whether they are, young girls walking to school or women who may have a drug problem and have been forced or otherwise tricked into prostitution or any other human trafficking scenario. We will defend their rights as well. They have not any less expectation of the defense of their lives than someone who is, a school kid going to school, just because they may have made decisions or been put in situations that were unfortunate.